Season 1 of One Punch Man was pretty much perfect. Everything from the animation, sound design, music production, and even the storyboarding just came together and made this perfect anime. Okay, that's enough glazing. We're here to talk about the fights. All the fights in season 1, and I'm gonna be ranking them. Now hear me out. The reason I did this video was because I thought it would be fun. Okay, it really just gave me a good excuse just to watch season 1 again for like the 50th time. But not only that, I had to count how many fights, and I honestly don't remember there being a lot of them, but there is about 40 of them spanning across 12 episodes. And I guess my ranking system will be like 40 being the worst, and of course number 1 being the best fight. I think I'm okay with that ranking system. I don't know, I'll probably change my mind later, probably throughout the video, but we'll see. So with all that being said, let's get to ranking the fights. Kicking off our ranking list here, all the way at the bottom, being the worst, is number 40, and that'll be Chiranko versus Genos. Now, the reason this is the worst is because it really wasn't even a fight. I mean, Chiranko really just got mad because Genos and Saitama didn't want to learn martial arts from Bang, and of course, Chiranko being his only student, he'd be upset, and he tries to go in and attack Genos, but Genos quickly counters him and kinda chokes him out for a little bit, and Chiranko gives up. So it was a pretty funny little scene, but there was really no fighting in it whatsoever. Coming up next is number 39, and that'll be Saitama versus Tank Top Tiger and Tank Top Blackhole. This fight happens right after Saitama destroys that meteor, and of course him destroying that meteor caused a lot of debris and rocks to fall on the city, causing mass destruction. Tank Top Tiger and Tank Top Blackhole happen to be around the city when this happens, and of course they use this to their advantage. You see, they think Saitama is a fraud, they think he's cheating, but they don't know that he's extremely fucking powerful. Saitama at this point in the story has been climbing up the ranks pretty quickly, and of course Tank Top Tiger and Blackhole are a little bit jealous, and so the Tank Top duo decide to get the city to turn on Saitama, but that didn't really work out because they also try to attack him, and Saitama makes quick work of them. He quickly punches Tiger and he makes Blackhole submit just by crushing his hand. But like I said about the previous fight, not too much going on. There weren't really throwing hands or nothing, but it was still a pretty cool scene. So at number 38, we have Saitama versus Kombu Infinity, and this fight occurs in episode 6. Before we move on, we are starting to get to the off-screen fights, and if you don't know what an off-screen fight is, they're essentially fights that don't show the action, the punches, nothing. They won't show most of the fighting. It'll just show like the beginning of the altercation, and then it'll cut away, and then it'll come back to the end result of that. And if you see one of your favorite fights down here so low, is because they're off screen. You know, we don't really get to see the meat of the fight. So yeah, so back to the fight. Kombu Infinity walks up into Saitama's city Z, and his neighborhood, looking to do your typical monster shit, and he quickly encounters 2 A-class heroes and he makes work of them. But unfortunately, Kombu picked the wrong place and the wrong time to be there because Saitama just came back from some grocery shopping, and Kombu goes ahead and tries to attack him, and Saitama actually forgot to purchase Kombu, so you can guess what happened during this fight. Obviously Saitama won, off-screened him, and turned Kombu Infinity into his meal for the day. And if I can recall correctly, I think I remember Murata drew like a little doodle of like Saitama plucking away the Kombu off Kombu Infinity, so he didn't actually kill him. So yeah, there's that. Coming in at number 37, we have Saitama versus the Seafolk, specifically that one octopus monster sea creature person thing. So in episode 8, Saitama comes in and saves the day and one punches this Seafolk octopus monster, and he actually does it off screen, so we don't get to see it, but we do see Mumen Rider seeing the aftermath of that. So yeah, coming in at number 36, we have Mumen Rider versus the Paradise Group and HammerHead. Now, no disrespect to my goat, Mumen Rider, but he got off-screened pretty quickly here by HammerHead and his group, the Paradisers. There's really not that much to be said. He really did try his best to be a hero, but he got knocked out pretty quickly, I'm not gonna lie to you. And so coming in at number 35, we have Saitama versus Snek, and this occurred in episode 5. A-class hero Snek was afraid of being outranked by Saitama, so he decided what every other reasonable hero would do, and he would go ahead and try to newbie crush Saitama, aka just try to beat him up, okay? And of course, Saitama easily off-screened him. It wasn't even a fight, it was just a one and done. We're moving on. Coming in at number 34, we have Snek, All Black Man, Jet Nice Guy, and BunBun Man. 4 heroes from the Hero Association versus Deep Sea King, and this fight occurred in episode 8, in which Deep Sea King broke into an evacuation center where the 4 heroes were hiding. Having no choice but to confront and fight Deep Sea King, they quickly got off-screened by him, and it was just another one and done. The build up to this fight was pretty funny though. It really made us believe that they stood a chance. Coming in at number 33, we have Tatsumaki versus Ancient King, and this was the first time we've seen Tatsumaki use her abilities and see her in action, and the way she was introduced was pretty cool. She got dropped from a plane, kind of like a bomb, but they just straight up deployed her, and when she confronted the Ancient King, she just brought a meteor down on him and off-screened him. So yeah, that was pretty cool. So I think that covers all the off-screen fights. We might have 1 or 2 more down the list, but we are starting to get to the one shot or one punch fights. And what I mean by that is that there are fights in the series that literally just end super quickly because Saitama either one punches them or just any character really that just defeats their enemy in just one shot. Now, some of them are better than others, like some one shots have a better build up to them and better animation quality and sound design. You know, I was just taking all that into account when I was ranking these. So yeah. But moving forward to number 32, we have Carnage Kabuto versus one of Dr. Genus's clones, and this wasn't a fight at all really. He just punched one of Genus's clones to death. His clone was trying really hard to defend himself, and he didn't stand a chance. Carnage Kabuto was too strong, and this occurred in episode 3, so yeah. Coming in at number 31, we have Melzargard versus the Sky King and his gang. So this fight happened in episode 10, and it wasn't really even a fight again, because Melzargard just straight up one-tapped all of them behind their backs. So yeah, coming in at number 30, we have Saitama versus the Subterranean King. And this, again, wasn't really a fight, but it was pretty funny because Saitama just got done waking up from a really good dream of him fighting the Subterraneans. But it didn't end up exactly how the dream went, okay? And he pretty much just one-tapped the king and the rest gave up. Coming in at number 29, we have Saitama versus the Super Custom Car Monster. Now look, I'm not going to say his whole name. That shit is ridiculously long, but you can read it. I'll have it up on the screen. So the Super Custom Car Monster pulls up on Saitama talking his shit in the middle of Saitama's inner emotional dialogue, or monologue I should say, but Saitama was having none of it and he quickly one-taps him, and that's pretty much it. So next up is number 28, and that'll be Saitama versus Vaccine Man, and of course this happened in the very first episode as well. I'm just realizing there's actually a lot of monsters that just get one-tapped in the first episode. A lot of these fights are actually in the first episode, but like I was saying, this fight actually ends up happening because that Piccolo looking monster Vaccine Man was about to crush this little girl, but Saitama goes in, saves the day, saves that little girl, and Vaccine Man begins to go on a rant about how humans are a plague to the earth and how he was gonna pretty much annihilate all of them, and Saitama just one-taps him. But moving on to one of the more iconic one-tap fights here at number 27, it is Saitama versus Mosquito Girl, and I think we all know this fight, okay? It's iconic. Just like I said before, this is just one of those fights that got you into this anime. Like if someone shows you a clip of this, you would be like, okay, that was pretty funny, it looks pretty cool, I'm gonna give this anime a try. And of course Saitama just slaps her. Genos is surprised, he's in awe, he's just amazed by Saitama's power, and the rest is history. I'm not gonna lie, I am pretty much speedrunning through a lot of these fights because they're just plain old just one taps or off-screen fights. And speaking of off-screen fights, we have here at number 26 Genos versus Armored Gorilla, and this happened in episode 2. Genos fights the Armored Gorilla for like a couple seconds. It was pretty well animated. They were definitely throwing hands, but he got off-screened and we see his defeat later on. But his defeat was actually pretty hilarious, because the whole time Genos was thinking that he was a cyborg, and he actually wasn't a cyborg. He's just an armored gorilla who was mimicking a robot or a cyborg. And definitely one of the better off-screen fights. It was really well animated for like the couple of seconds that they were throwing hands, and it was pretty hilarious too. So yeah, let's move on to the next, which is number 25, and that'll be Saitama versus Marugori. And this happened in episode 1, and this was one of those really well animated one taps. It wasn't just like a fast one tap. It was pretty good. It was pretty hilarious. Marugori was trying to become extremely strong, and his brother made him that strength serum, and then they both decided to take over the world, and then they both cause a bunch of destruction, and then he accidentally ends up killing his own brother, and then Saitama just comes in and one taps him. It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, at number 24 we have Saitama versus Pluton, and this was the final fight of season 1, and it was a pretty good way to send off the season finale because the way it was built up was pretty hype. You have Genos coming in to save the little boy, and Pluton asks him who he is. Genos responds with just a man who does hero work for fun, obviously Saitama's line, and then Saitama actually ends up coming in and one tapping him. And yeah, it was a pretty good way to end off the season. Coming up next is number 23, and that'll be Saitama versus Groribas and Geryuganshoop. Both of these space monsters were a part of the Dark Matter group, also known as Boros's spaceship crew. But as Saitama invades the ship, he makes quick work of Groribas and also makes quick work of Geryuganshoop. Now the fight with Geryuganshoop was a little bit more interesting because that was the first time we've seen Saitama go up against an Esper, and Geryuganshoop shows off his abilities, throws a couple of pebbles and rocks at him, and Saitama makes quick work of him by throwing one back. So yeah, there's that. But coming in at number 22, we have Lightning Max versus Deep Sea King, and this happened in episode 8, and my boy Lightning Max tried to put up a fight, but Deep Sea King ended up pretty much two-tapping him, just completely obliterated him. Okay, he didn't really stand a chance, but it was pretty good. It was pretty funny the way it started, just by Deep Sea King taking Lightning Max by surprise, him freaking out. It was a decent fight. Okay, but I think we all know the superior Deep Sea King fight, and that was against Mumen Rider, and he takes our spot in number 21, and this happened in episode 9. Now listen, we all know that Mumen Rider isn't the strongest, but he ain't a bitch. Okay, he ain't a bitch, and he didn't back down from this fight even when Deep Sea King completely annihilated Genos and had everyone just had their backs against the wall. Mumen Rider didn't. Okay, he stood up, gave a powerful speech, and gave it his all, but he was ultimately useless, but he's still my GOAT. Next up will be number 20, and that'll be Saitama versus HammerHead, and this took place in episode 4, and this fight was pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie to you. HammerHead uses a move that Saitama used to use as a child, and Saitama just completely counters him, and he doesn't really even hurt the guy. He just tells him to get lost after breaking his armor, and so HammerHead does get lost. He runs away naked in the woods. Next up we have number 19, and that's gonna be Saitama versus Deep Sea King, and this fight occurs in episode 9, and this fight was pretty cool. This is again another one of those iconic one taps, and in this one Deep Sea King confronts Saitama, and Saitama's kind of like, yo, did you do this shit to Genos, and are you the one causing all this mess? Deep Sea King's like, yeah, and then he goes on to give a rant about how he hates humans and shit, and how he's gonna take over, and of course Saitama is having none of it, and he just tells him to hurry up. Deep Sea King then tries to attack Saitama, but Saitama just one punches him before he can even get attacked, and completely obliterates him, and even stops the rain around him, which was pretty cool. So next up on our list is number 18, and that'll be Stinger versus the Seafolk on episode 8. You know what, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I might switch these around. I think I might put Stinger versus Seafolk at 19, and Saitama versus Deep Sea King at 18. We're just gonna switch them. You know what? Because now that I'm looking at it, the Stinger versus the Seafolk wasn't really as cool as Saitama versus Deep Sea King because it was well built up. Deep Sea King was a real threat, and Stinger just took out a lot of the fodder. So you know what? We're just gonna switch those two around, and we're gonna move on here. That was pretty much the first time we've seen Stinger fight. So yeah, moving on to number 17, which will be Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball versus Kombu Infinity. Now we're really starting to get into the little bit longer fights. You know, these aren't your one taps or off screens, so these are a little bit more entertaining, and a lot of these are well animated, well choreographed, and the music and all that stuff. So yeah, this fight occurred on episode 6, in which where both Class A hero Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball were sent to investigate the abandoned part of City Z, and of course they came across the monster known as Kombu Infinity, where both of them show off their skills and fight against Kombu. But I'm not gonna lie, they were made short work of, and they were ultimately defeated. But we all know what happened to Kombu. He made a nice meal for Saitama and Genos. Next up, we got Speedo Sound Sonic versus Deep Sea King here at our number 16, and this fight took place in episode 8, and the fight actually ended in a draw, really, because Speedo Sound Sonic was really just trying to show off his speed, but Deep Sea King was pretty much nerfed, and I think he pretty much caught up to Speedo Sound Sonic once he got the buff from the rain, because he thrives in wet environments. So yeah, it wasn't really too much of a fight, but it was really well animated. And I think the more I talk about it, I think I might just change my opinion and switch the Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball fight with this fight right here. So you know what? I lied. Speedo Sound Sonic is at number 17, okay, and Spring Mustachio and Golden Ball versus Kombu Infinity is at number 16. You know, I think I'm happy with that. So now I'm just gonna move on, okay? So number 15, we got Saitama versus the House of Evolution monsters / beasts. Okay, it's in episode 2. You know that part. It's a pretty iconic scene too. In this fight, Saitama pretty much sweeps the 3 fodder, Kamakuri, Sluggerus, and the Frogman. And while that's happening, Genos is handling the armored gorilla, but we're talking about specifically Saitama versus the 3 fodder, and obviously the mole ground dragon, and of course Beast King, and how we saw normal consecutive punches for the first time being used on Beast King, and then shortly afterwards he chases after ground dragon, and it was pretty funny. He just pops up out of nowhere and kind of jump scares him. But yeah, it was a really well animated scene, had some funny moments in it, and that's why it's in our number 15 spot. Coming in at number 14, we have Speedo Sound Sonic versus Saitama, round 2 specifically, and this was in episode 6. Now the reason I chose the second time they fought was because I found it to be not as hilarious as like their first encounter. This one was pretty funny. It kind of spirals into like chaos because Speedo Sound Sonic confronts Saitama, and Saitama just completely forgot about Speedo Sound Sonic from the last time they met, and then Tank Top Tiger kind of goes into bully Saitama, and then it like turns into straight chaos. It was a pretty funny fight, but definitely not as good as the first one. And speaking of the first one, coming in at number 13, we have Saitama versus Speedo Sound Sonic round 1, and this happened in episode 4, and their first fight was just a lot more hilarious because Speedo Sound Sonic mistaked him for one of the Paradisers, but Saitama quickly tries to correct him and say that he's actually a hero, but Speedo Sound Sonic doesn't care because Saitama was able to read through his attacks, and so Speedo Sound Sonic decides to attack him by using one of his moves known as the Wind Blade Kick, but Saitama evades that and punches him in the nuts. So yeah. Coming in at number 12, we have EIN versus Melzargard in episode 10. In this fight, we see EIN's fighting abilities for the first time, and we also learn that he's also the disciple of Atomic Samurai. But not only do we see his fighting abilities for the first time, but we're seeing Melzargard's abilities as well. We see his regeneration and of course how powerful he is. It was a really quick fight, but it wasn't as quick as like a one tap or an off screen would be, so that's why it's here at number 12. But coming in at number 11, we have Speedo Sound Sonic again versus the Paradisers and HammerHead himself. And this happened in episode 4, and this was one of the relatively longer fights compared to the one taps and off screens that the majority of season 1 has. But in this fight, we get to see Speedo Sound Sonic's fighting abilities for the first time, and he pretty much blitzes the entire Paradise group. Not only that, but it had a hilarious conclusion because HammerHead was still alive by the end of the fight, and the animation and storyboarding really gives it a plus, so that's why it's pretty high up here. We finally made it to the 10 fights left on our ranking system list here, and all of these fights stood out to me, whether it was the animation, the choreography, or the storyboarding. All of these fights are just extremely good, okay? And kicking it off here at number 10, we have Saitama versus Carnage Kabuto. Although Carnage Kabuto does get one tapped, the build up to this fight was fucking hilarious. We have the reveal of Saitama's extreme workout regimen, and you know, the Dr. Genus, Carnage Kabuto, and Genos were all really invested on how Saitama got that strong, and it just turned out to be a regular ass workout, and Carnage Kabuto got really pissed. He transformed, okay, so we have a transformation in this, and he starts going off on Saitama, and we think that Saitama is starting to get a little bit nervous during this battle. We start to think that he's losing and that he's panicking, but he really just started panicking about the sale that was going on at his local grocery store that he goes to, and he was really worried that he'd miss it, so one punched Carnage Kabuto and left with Genos in a hurry to the grocery store. So yeah, overall this fight was really good, very well animated, very funny build up, very funny conclusion. It had us on the edge there just for a little bit, so yeah, overall good fight. Up next in our number 9 spot, we have Puri Prisoner versus Deep Sea King. And again, this was a really great fight, very funny fight too. This was the first time we've seen Puri Prisoner in action, the first time we've seen Deep Sea King take on an S-class hero, and it did not disappoint. We had a really cool reference to what's that one anime? Damn, I forgot the name. Sailor Moon, there you go. And Puri Prisoner gets naked, starts punching on Deep Sea King. Deep Sea King quickly counters him and just starts going in on Puri Prisoner, kicks him into a fucking building, and that was pretty much the whole fight. It was a pretty hilarious fight. We had a really cool transformation scene, very well animated. It was just a bit too short for me. I just wish it was a little bit longer. Next up on our list is number 8, and that'll be Genos versus Carnage Kabuto. Now, look, every time Genos fights, it's just badass, you know? That's why I have him higher than Puri Prisoner and Saitama versus Carnage Kabuto, because something about Genos fighting, it's always cool to see him fight, even though he ends up losing most of the time. There's just something about Genos, you know, I just want to cheer him on. But yeah, in this fight, we see Genos trying to blitz Carnage Kabuto and throw punches at him, but everything is futile. Carnage Kabuto is just tanking all of it. And then when all else fails, Genos tries to throw a blast attack, and Carnage Kabuto just blows it right back at him, literally, and he gives him a throw, which was pretty hilarious. Although the fight was short, it was very well animated, and like I said, bro, I have some personal bias with some characters like Genos, you know. You know what? I think I'm just a Genos stan. Never mind, just forget I said that. Moving on to number 7, and that'll be Genos versus Mosquito Girl. Now, this was the first time we got introduced to Genos, and this was the first time we've seen him throw down. And this fight was pretty much, it was pretty long. It was longer than most fights on the list for sure. That's why it's up here, and of course it's Genos, and it's his first time fighting someone on screen, you know. Although Genos got his ass kicked, okay, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was a pretty entertaining fight, a very well animated fight. Obviously we get Genos' badass theme song, and we see a transformation from Mosquito Girl. And later throughout the fight, we see Genos trying to commit sauce on the side, and of course we all know what ends up happening. Saitama comes in and helps our boy out. But an even more impressive fight here coming up next at our number 6 spot, we have Genos versus Deep Sea King. Now, the build up to this fight was obviously hype because we saw Deep Sea King make work of a bunch of heroes from the Hero Association, and my boy was just out here terrorizing the people of One Punch Man, and Genos comes in to save the day because this took place right after the 4 A class heroes, completely failed to take on Deep Sea King, but our boy Genos is here. He arrives and throws down with Deep Sea King, man. I'm not gonna lie, we see Genos just go off, and it really had us in the first half because Genos was just going in on Deep Sea King, using a flurry of just punches, blast attacks, and just techniques. And not only that, but it was really well animated, and I really liked just the atmosphere of the fight, you know. And although Genos does take the L in this one, was a really well done fight. There's really not much to be said. Coming in at our number 5 spot, we have Atomic Samurai, Bang, Metal Bat, and Puri Prisoner, along with a bunch of other S-Class heroes versus Melzargard. And this was the first time we've seen the S-Class heroes work together to take on an enemy, and Melzargard was no joke of an enemy until they figured out his weakness. You know, he had regeneration. He was just a good matchup for all of these guys. I think I'm just like a big sucker for like big battles. I guess you could say this wasn't really a huge battle, but it involved more than one hero, and it was pretty long, and it was very well animated. The OST was on point here, well storyboarded. All the different personalities from the heroes and all the trash talk really made this fight, and just the different showcasing of all the powers from the heroes really just makes this fight come together. There's not that much to be said. Definitely a goated fight. But speaking of multiple heroes and stuff, at our number 4 spot, we have Genos, Bang, Bofoi, and Saitama versus the Meteor. Now, look, there weren't any hands being thrown, okay? It wasn't a super long fight, and it is a one-tap, because we all know what happens, and I just had to put this up here, you know, because it's such an iconic scene. It starts off with Genos putting on and testing out his new tech, his arms, so he could use his incineration cannon at full power, and then it suddenly cuts to Dr. Bofoi, also known as Metal Knight, and this was the first time we're being introduced to Metal Knight, and he begins to use his destructive firepower and launches a bunch of rockets at the Meteor, but to no avail. It does not work, so he pretty much just dips and lets Genos take over, and of course Genos does take over. Genos uses his core and puts it in his arm to blast a huge incineration cannon. He uses all of his power to try to take down this meteor, and as Bang watches, he provides some funny commentary, I'm not gonna lie, and Genos, he couldn't do anything. Even at full power, he couldn't bring this meteor down, and when all seemed helpless, Saitama comes in and saves the day. He literally leaps, jumps all the way up there, prepares his punch, and takes out this meteor, just punching straight through it. Bang and Genos watch in awe as Saitama just one punches this meteor, and of course this was just peak, okay? This entire scene, fight, whatever, was just peak, okay? The OST was on point, and the animation, of course, also being on point, and the sequence when Genos puts on his new tech, and we also see Dr. Bofoi fly in, it was all just amazing. The build-up was cool as fuck. It was just too iconic not to put up here, okay? But we still got 3 other fights that I consider way better than that, so yeah. Up next at our number 3 spot, we have Saitama versus Genos. And you can tell just by the setting of the fight being in like a huge flat area, like in a canyon, you can tell the fight was gonna be good, and it did not disappoint. This was just supposed to be a practice battle, kind of like a spar, but Genos tells Saitama to go all out, and Genos of course also goes all out. And in this fight, we really get to see what Genos can do. We see all the different tech that he has, and he pretty much uses all of his arsenal against Saitama here. But Saitama being, you know, extremely powerful, he evades all of Genos' attacks, and Genos struggles to even just land a punch on him. So he kind of just stops the fight and tells Saitama to show no mercy. And Saitama, of course, does that. He quickly gets behind Genos and throws a never before seen death punch. And we've never seen this move from Saitama, and the first time I watched this, I ain't gonna lie, I thought he was gonna kill our boy here, but he stops his punch before it even lands, and we see the devastating aftermath of that punch, and Genos realizes how powerful he truly is. And yeah, man, just everything in this fight was amazing. Of course, personal bias, it's Genos, his theme song is badass, sound design in this was amazing, you know, animation, everything was really well done, and again, a super iconic moment in the anime. So yeah. Coming in at our number 2 spot, we have Saitama versus the Subterraneans, and this is the dream fight, okay? This entire fight was all a dream of Saitama's, and The reason this fight is so high up there was obviously because of the animation. The animation is obviously on point every time, okay? I think we all know that by now, but the build up to this fight was really good. This happens in the first episode, and in the first episode it really establishes how strong Saitama truly is. And so for us to see Saitama get caught off guard and to essentially take damage in this fight, and he really pushes himself in here because emotionally he was just bored, he was just drained. He found no excitement in fighting, and for him to find excitement in this dream of his, in this fight, it was really cool to see. An extremely iconic fight. This fight went really viral, of course, especially because it was in the first episode. I think if this fight wasn't in the first episode, I don't think that it would have launched like this series. It wouldn't have propelled this series like that, you know what I'm saying? It hit the nail is what I'm saying. But the alarm clock that woke up Saitama really stole from the fight, okay? We were about to see the Subterranean King and Saitama throw down, and of course we got cucked, we got blue balled, we didn't see it. So that's why it's here at our number 2 spot. I don't think to anyone's surprise, at our number 1 spot is Saitama versus Boros. What can I say about this fight that already hasn't been said? This fight is just pure eye candy, man. There's transformations. It's pretty long, you know. I think it's everything we want out of One Punch Man fights. The build up to this fight was pretty good. Obviously Saitama boarding Boros' ship. We knew Boros was the big bad guy. I think when we all saw his like design, you know, we all saw the way he looked, we all knew that he was going to be the final boss. And as soon as he took that first punch from Saitama and got right back up, we knew shit was about to go down. The animation, choreography, storyboarding, writing, the emotion, like the emotions that come from this fight it's just amazing. I don't know how much more I can glaze this. We see the debut of Saitama's serious punch, never before seen. We see this character, Boros, use like a huge planet busting, alright, whatever. He was powerful, okay? And for Boros to really understand how Saitama feels and just how sad it is, because of course Boros is like a reflection of Saitama. He's a space monster that couldn't find any excitement in fighting, but he finally found excitement in fighting Saitama. You know, in a way Saitama can't even achieve that, and there were many cool parallels like that throughout this fight. This fight still gives me goosebumps to this day. Just go watch this fight, man. Just talking about it just makes me want to rewatch this fight. So yeah, so that's the end of my ranking of all the fights in season 1 One Punch Man. It was really difficult to do this, actually, even though some of these fights are really short and most of them are off screen and one taps. I think that's what really made it difficult, because I had to take into account like the build ups to the fight, the OSCs, the animations, and all that stuff. And it was just extremely hard making this. I'm not gonna lie to you, but if you stuck around this long, consider subscribing, drop a like on the video if you enjoy, and make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. You know, I really want to see everyone's thoughts and opinions, because I always enjoy reading them. And if you want to see some more One Punch Man content, make sure you check out my other videos. I appreciate you for watching. See ya.